the abandoned buildings, they became a second home for me. The people that I would run into and the things that I would do in those places, just for drugs.
It was freezing. We ran out of gas, but side by side, my husband in one of our vehicles and me in the other. And we were covering up ourselves with the mats of the cars. I had vomited on myself. I was wearing the same clothes for weeks. We had been hiding out at a friend's house and the police came, told us to split. And that's where we ended up. Just dead.
The prescription drugs had really started to take over.
I was taking Oxycontin like it was going out of style.
I couldn't do anything without using.
It's not about getting high anymore, it's just about feeling normal, about avoiding sickness.
I was a walking dead person.
It's the end of the road, it's slavery.
It just was unreal, the feeling I had when I took it, and I just couldn't stop taking it.
Your whole world, it's all you think about all day long and all night long. Your whole world revolves around the drug.
I felt like I was in a bottomless pit and I wasn't coming out.
My childhood was really nice, and I grew up with a family of 6, and my mother and my father were educated. They taught us morals and values. We went to church, and that was pretty much it. My parents gave us a lot of love.
I grew up in Peoria, Illinois, and I am the eldest of 6 children. I grew up in, I guess back then they called them the projects. So I grew up in the projects.
I had a great childhood. I have 2 wonderful parents, a younger sister. I'm the oldest. I couldn't complain. I was very involved in sports. I have tons of friends. Was involved in a lot of different things. I couldn't ask for a better childhood.
I'm a product of 2 addicts. My mother and my father both used. My dad was an alcoholic. My mother was a prescription pill user. So it was a pretty sad household.
Growing up in a single parent home with a mother who taught me, right from wrong. Because my mother, she didn't use drugs, and there was no smoking and drinking like constantly going on in my home around me. I was just that kind of kid that needed to prove something. And when I found drugs, it helped me. I could never really be satisfied in my own skin.
When I was high, I was beautiful, I was thin, I was everything that I never was when I was sober. So for me, I used to say it was my happy pill, It's how I got through the day, it's how I, was who I was.
It gave me the courage to, just be the guy that I'm normally not. I'm normally not the, the totally I'm an outgoing person, but I'm not the, walk up and start a conversation right away with a girl and ask for a phone number type of stuff like that. And that's what it did for me.
They made me have energy, blocked my pain, and allowed me to be a supermom, allowed me to get done things, allowed me to maintain organization for a certain amount of time until eventually my life became out of control and unmanageable.
And I wasn't high, I was a hermit. I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want to be around anybody. I was back to that, I'm not, I'm fat, I'm ugly. Nobody wants to be around me, but the drugs definitely changed that. I felt amazing, and I can honestly say I was hooked instantly. From that point on, I probably did Percocet every single day or some sort of an opiate from that day until I decided to get clean.
It was never enough to just do this. It was never enough to just drink alcohol. It was never enough to just smoke weed. I always had to have more and more and more. And very quickly, once I discovered like the Xanax and the Percocets especially, the opiates were my drugs of choice. And you know, then it led into the Oxycontins. I did whatever it took to be in that world.
First it was the bottle, and then it went to, okay, I can get them now. You know, someone can sell me a couple. It went to that. Well, never a couple. But no, it was too late. I had reached a point of no return, you know. And when I started to pop pills, that became, especially Percocet, that became, the other stuff that I would try, it really didn't make me feel the same way that Percocet did. Because I was one of those people that wanted to try everything, every drug. But Percocet was my drug of choice. Let me tell you, it was very easy for me to con the doctor. You know, being able that I knew how to speak the King's English, and I knew how to, and I would use my being HIV. I would actually use my being HIV. Oh, you know, this is, oh. So it was quite easy, instead of them, you know, okay, well, why don't you come in for a doctor's visit? Why don't we check you out? Oh, it was quite easy for me to get on the phone, you know. And then when they caught on to the game, you know, by the time they catch on to the game, it's too late, because now you're off, you know, getting it from the dealer or what have you, who's also using the doctor.
When I was in college, I played a lot of sports. I had a lot of pain, a lot of injuries. I also met who became my husband at the time in college. He was a swimmer and a jet skier down on Long Beach Island. And he taught me how to jet ski. All the time that I was jumping waves and acting like a maniac, I was pounding in my spine. So I had a condition like where I herniated all the lumbar regions of, you know, the lumbar region of all those discs. So I had spinal surgery, and that's when I was introduced to Oxycontin.
I wouldn't go and get heroin. I would rather do the Oxycontins, because in my own head, I felt as though it wasn't as bad. You know, they give these to people for help, for pain, or doctors are able to write prescriptions, and you can go to a drugstore and get them. So I didn't think it was as bad as going to a corner in Camden and, you know, talking to the cop man and getting, you know, bags or, you know, heroin. I thought that I wasn't as bad as they were. Yet, in reality, I was probably 10 times worse.
Every day was the same thing over and over again. Wake up, figure out how I'm going to get through the day, how I'm going to get high. Because I was, you know, I was a garbage can. I would just do whatever I had, as much as I had. I didn't care about the consequences. So I would say I was probably taking around 5 or 6 pills a day. And they weren't a small dose either. They were a pretty potent dose of narcotics that I was putting into my system every single day. So, and then I would take Xanax to go to sleep. So I was a mess.
There was a point in active addiction where my husband, and I'll never forget it, he was doing everything, doing his job and taking care of me and taking care of my babies and taking care of my family and taking care of our home and driving me back and forth to the hospital. And he had hurt his neck, and he called my doctor, and he said, we had the same doctor for 10 years, and he said, look, I hurt my neck. And my doctor said, why don't you try one of Lisa's pain medications? If it works for you, I'll prescribe you some. And that's when, like, the madness began, because he got addicted to my painkillers, which made me not have them, which just instantly had our life spiral out of control.
Actually, after my father died, we had a yard sale and we sold all of his stuff. And first thing I did was, my brother and I, first thing we did was go and we bought like 30 or 40 Percocets with the money that we had gotten from our dead father's stuff, and then went to the bar and we were drinking to him.
My grandmother, who lives with my parents, who at the time I was living with, I knew when she got her Social Security check. I knew when she got her pension check. And I would wait, and I would take their money.
We would fight over the drugs. We'd fight over my drugs. We got into like a fist fight, and he split my face open, fighting over OxyContin. And we were at a point where we had moved into like a bigger home, and he was still doing his job, and we're still hiding it from the world. But like inside our life, that's what we were doing. We were fighting. Our babies were too little to know and to understand. They're still being cared for. But like we were dying. I mean, and then just more and more different types of drugs like cocaine and crack. You know, like just whatever we could do to make ourselves feel better. And we had a lifetime of savings, stock, you know, money saved, investments, and we spent every dime on drugs. We took every ounce of money we owned all the way down to my daughter's piggy banks, and we spent it. We spent it on drugs.
But at this time, I had done so much, and I'd done so much to where I felt so guilty about. And particularly with HIV, when you use drugs and you drink and you pop in pills, how often do you think you're really going to tell someone, you know, oh, by the way, I'm HIV?
I couldn't do anything without using. I had, you know, towards the end of my addiction, it was at the point where I couldn't even get out of bed without having a drink, taking something just to be able to make my daughter's lunch or give her a bath or make her bed, or just, you know, I thought I was a great mother because I was doing everything that I had to do for my child, when in fact I was not a good mother. You know, I was using drugs to do what I was supposed to do.
I had run out of the OxyContin that I was using, and I knew if I went to the hospital that the doctors would give me morphine. And this time when I got there, they gave me the morphine, you know, when I first got there and through the first night, and then they cut it. I thought my appendix had burst, or I thought that I had a terrible stomach flu. I was deathly ill in the hospital over Christmas, detoxing, begging these doctors to give me something. And while my family was home opening presents on Christmas, but that didn't matter to me. What mattered was getting the prescription drugs that I wanted. I wanted the morphine back, or I wanted them to give me OxyContin. I wanted them to give me Dilaudid. I felt like a terrible son that I had resorted to lying to doctors and nurses and my family and parents, all to be able to get high. And you know, Christmas is the time for family and giving, and here I am doing the most selfish thing possible.
And I really believe that I hit my bottom when I could not. I remember having the key, literally, but I just didn't have the energy to put the key in the door because my mind said, take your ass back out there and do what you do best, use. And that's what I did.
They were in their, they were so little, and they were like sitting on the couch, and I was in the kitchen. You should have seen our kitchen look like it should be on a in a magazine. Granite countertops and beautiful like cherry wood floors, and we would like be playing games and smoking crack and sniffing heroin and sniffing oxy. It just didn't matter. Playing cards, and my kids were in another room. They were acting nuts, and it was like I was like, oh, I wonder if like the smoke is bothering them, like the, you know, if they're high, you know. I would leave them in their cribs, and if they like were in their diapers, and leave them there, and I couldn't get up and take care of them. And they would have like it all. My daughter would eventually take off. My little one would take off her diaper, and like it would be loaded, and she would just spread it all over her, and it would be hours before I went in to care for them.
I had stolen about $5,000 from my father, and I was spending around $300 to $400 a day on crack and heroin. And at the end, what I did was I wanted to take my life. The plan was that I was either gonna kill myself on the way to the bridge, either into an oncoming car, like on the expressway, or run a median or something, or I was gonna get to the bridge, the Walt Whitman Bridge, and I was gonna jump off. And I figured it would have to be quick because where was I gonna leave my car? I would have to leave it in the middle of the road. So I knew that it would just be jump out the car, and I'd be off, and that was gonna be it.
It never stopped till all the money was gone. And we ended up selling our house, and Mike's family did an intervention on him because, like, I was still the victim that was prescribed the medication from the doctors, but Mike was stealing it. So I was still playing that role. And one day, someone came knocking on our door, and they said, and they left a card, and they said the Division of Youth and Family Services in Pennsylvania. And they were like I knew why they were coming to my house, and I couldn't stop. Like, they were coming to drug test us, and I never went to the drug test, and I couldn't stop. And they took our kids.
I had started going to abandoned houses and, like, really staying in there. And I lived right around the corner. I remember there was this abandoned building in 5th and Dickinson in Philly. And now I know that I'm HIV positive. And I can remember being on the 2nd floor of that building. And I can remember wanting to die.
My sister, who's younger than I am, she's 20. She's actually in a rehab right now. Not because of the prescription drugs, but because of where they led her. She started out, addicted to, back in high school, she was addicted to Xanax. And then from Xanax, that led to, she was able to stop them, and then she went to Percocets. Percocets led to Oxycontins. And from there, now she ended herself up in rehab because, for like the past year, she's been shooting heroin. She knew that if she started to detox, or if she was running out of manipulations or scams, that she could go to the hospital and get the doctors to give her the drugs. And she went to the point where a couple years ago, she had them so fooled that the doctors thought that she needed to have her gallbladder removed. That was the problem. That was why, she was so-called in pain. She had her gallbladder taken out. And after the gallbladder was taken out, then she conned them into giving her prescriptions to go home with. She's me 2 years ago. And it's hard to take a look at yourself sometimes, especially when it's that bold in reality.
Towards the end of my addiction, my last week when I was using, I wanted to die. I did not want to live anymore. I couldn't. Every night when I went to bed, I would pray that I wouldn't wake up.
I was a beautiful person, and I had morals and values and a great life and a mother that loved me. And I couldn't stop. And I was ridiculously pathetic on drugs. And it made me somebody I wasn't and never wanted to be, and I couldn't stop. My daughter was in a crib in the room I was sleeping in. I was smoking crack out the window. I had a nightmare, and I ran down the steps, ran as if I was running off a cliff. And I fell down the steps in circles and just plastered myself into all my parents' furniture and broke it. And then that's when they took me to the psych ward the next day.
She was an amazing woman. My mom was the mom who would pull up to the driveway bumping Nas on the speakers, and with the pink streaks in her hair and the nose ring and all that stuff, when the other moms in town had mom jeans on and all that stuff. She told me that it started with taking a Percocet. She took a Percocet, and she was just amazed at how amazing it made her feel and how her problems and the stress in her life, she wasn't worried about it. It didn't matter. When it eventually took her life, she overdosed on fentanyl. I was in homework help club, this after school thing with my kids, my students, and I was helping someone with their homework, and I got a call on my cell phone. And I normally don't pick up numbers that I don't know. I let it go to voicemail, but for some reason I just picked up, and it was her boss. And he said, you know, this is so-and-so, and your mother just overdosed of fentanyl, and I don't think she's going to make it. So I just got in my car and drove directly to the hospital. And then 2 days later, she had died. It was when I was in the hospital and just kind of laying there and sitting there because I didn't want to go anywhere. That's when my thoughts really started to, you know, go everywhere, and realize that I didn't have what everybody else has anymore. You know, I don't have a mom. And it's awful. Like, you think about, like, you know, like having your first kid or any of that stuff, and she's not going to be there for that. She was my best friend. Like, we talked every day, every single day. So it's just, it's hard not to have that anymore. I miss her so much. I don't know, like when people say that they would give anything for like 1 second, like I totally know what they mean.
Young people are abusing prescription drugs because mainly because of their availability and because they're effective. Availability means that folks are going into medicine cabinets and they're getting it from physicians at an alarming, easy rate. You wouldn't see someone who, or the people that we see that are in treatment programs or even coming looking for treatment programs are not your perhaps Bowery Bum, Skid Row type individuals. These folks are college students. These folks are mainly between the ages of 18 and 25 years old. That's our major population as far as those folks are using illicit or prescription drugs illegally. Once the prescription drugs are no longer available, such as either because their dealer is no longer providing them, but they're going to seek alternative drugs that are going to give them similar effects, such as if they're addicted to pain meds. It's very likely, and there's a high probability, or what we call a high risk factor there, a high chance that they're going to pick up heroin. They're going to use heroin in place of. The truth is individuals do fall in love with the feeling, do fall in love with the process of getting the substances, and very few do remain drug-free. And again, what we use as a barometer sometimes, or as a benchmark, is 10%.
The disease of addiction is lonely, cold, dark. It's something I wouldn't wish on my biggest enemy.
In the end, it had taken everything from me. The feelings that it originally gave me in the beginning, that the raciness and the I can be anybody and do anything feeling, took all that away. I felt like a shell of a person. I couldn't cry, and if I did cry, it was uncontrollably. But they weren't over true feelings. They were over self-pity. It was over anguish for my life of where it had gotten me. The shell is just, you get caught in a cycle. There's no living involved. It's just existing. They opened that door, they kept me beat down, and they kept me from achieving the dreams that I wanted to achieve. In fact, they didn't keep me. I gave that to them. I gave that power to them. And today I have taken that power back.
I do think prescription drugs were like the downfall for me, because it was a feeling that I had, that I took, that it was okay because it was legal, and it was and that's the truth, and it was prescribed by the doctor.
It's better to, be silent and thought a fool than to open your mouth and reveal that you are one. Stop making excuses. You know, there is hope. You know, join the hope ship, and not the drug or the dope ship.
They're not to be taken lightly. They're just as dangerous, if not more. Don't let the bottle with the doctor's name and the pharmacy on the bottle fool you. Those drugs are, if not worse, in my opinion, but at least as bad as the drugs you get on the street.
I feel like the way it is now, that prescription drugs are being sold on the street and street drugs are being sold on the street, I feel like all drugs are equal and all drugs are the same.
In the time that I have been clean, you know, from drugs and alcohol, from not popping pills, you know, there's been a drastic change, spiritual change, a dramatic change in my life.
As hooked as I was on drugs, I was hooked to getting clean. Like all of a sudden I started listening, I started opening my eyes, opening my ears, didn't want Suboxone, didn't want anything. I wanted to get clean.
You know, my father and I never had a relationship because of what the drugs put between us. You know, my father was always sober, and you know, a sober man and an addicted man don't mesh well, because I never knew that life could be this much better without drugs.
You know, although I've been clean for 14 years, there's sometimes when I'll see a big sign, you know, that'll have a beer that looks real tantalizing, but I know that all I have to do is think about where I came from and where I'm at today and the consequences, and I consider all those factors, and I don't want to give up what I have today to go back to popping a pill.
I've been in recovery for 2 years and 11 months. And I surrounded myself where I was able to meet beautiful people that were also in recovery. And they showed me how to live, and they helped me to get my children back.
First of all, you do not have to walk the path that I walk. You don't have to be this mask and pretend to be something that you're not.
I've become a different person because everything I ever worked for my entire life, I destroyed, and it was all taken from me. So when you get back water and toilet paper and the basic needs to live, you become grateful.
Just because you get clean does not mean that you're not going to experience traumatic experiences. It doesn't mean that, you know, life is going to be full of roses. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to want to revert back to, you know, using the pills to cope. It doesn't mean that. Just because you get clean, just because you stop using drugs, it doesn't mean that. But what it does mean that if you apply yourself to the program, or whatever you apply yourself to, there is a big possibility, there's a real big chance that if you just hang in there, a miracle's gonna happen.
Everybody has their bottom, everyone has their pain. And the hope is that when the pain gets great enough, no matter who you are or how great your pain is, there's people out there that have had the experience and that can help you, and that there's freedom from using drugs.
If you or someone you know is abusing prescription drugs, talk to somebody. Get to a 12-step program such as Narcotics Anonymous. Reach out to a professional and get help.
I remember one night we went to a party, and I was already high, and I decided to bartend that night. I'm not bartending, but I decided, and the funny thing is, It wasn't my house. It wasn't my party. I wasn't supposed to bartend. I just took it over because I was high. That's another thing about Perk that I like. Although I was spacey, I was still able to just like, it was sort of like a, hey, I can maneuver my way through. Confidence, sense of confidence. I remember I was bartending, and anyway, I got mad at my partner that night. I thought he was messing around or something. And I remember I drank that night, and this was wild because I won't forget this. And I'm driving in Philadelphia down Broad Street, no lie, and I can't believe the cops did not stop me. I must have been going at least 80 miles an hour, at least. And like, I had 3 people in the car with me, and I'm like driving. I don't even know how we survived, you know. But in my head, although I was high and they were trying to take the wheel from me, it was like, you ain't taking this motherfucking wheel. And I was getting a rush off from me. Shut the fuck up. And I was like this, I was out of character, but I was in character. You know, that was wild. I'll never forget that. That was wild.